Hey guys, George here, doing our weekly video. Was on some properties today and saw a couple things that are always kind of not necessarily a pet peeve, but kind of something I don't suggest doing, especially with seeding, as it pertains to using mulches. A lot of it, what I'm talking about, is peat moss. That is a hydrophobic substance, so that actually is in fact usually worse for your seed just because it dries out. So we're going to do a little experiment. I've come out here to our garden. We're going to get a little bit of dirt. We're going to test some water uptake between that, some peat moss from one of my garden planters that we use for our pots, and kind of a trick that I've found just by accident, which is actually barbecue pellets, so like something that you would use for your Traeger. So as we come over here, you can see our planter boxes. We're going to go in here, find some of this stuff that's loose. We're going to put that into one of these mason jars. You can see that. Our soil over here. And our last thing is these extruded pellets. If you think about it, a lot of times places are suggesting you use extruded straw pellets as like under the name cover grow. These pellets are exactly the same thing. I literally scooped these up out of our box. The reason I say use these pellets is because it's pretty much the same thing. They're a lot cheaper for the bag, and they break down a lot quicker. They leave a lot less residual. So to start, here's our peat. When I say this stuff is hydrophobic, that is floating right now. I did this one first so that way we can come back to it and see if it's uptaking any of the water. Here are our pellets. You can see those really aren't even floating. You can already see those absorbing water. And then our soil. So we'll come down over here. You can see on this soil that water is already penetrating. There's a little bit of a dry spot here, but it is quickly turning into mud. Our peat moss is still floating, and our pellets are already expanding and taking that water up. So these will actually expand, kind of turn into a good mulch, break apart. I will add some more water, and I'll probably post the picture in the comments later so that way you guys can see. So I added quite a bit more water to this. Peat still floating, not really doing anything. Over here you can see this soil has already absorbed all that water. Peat is still floating. So the reason I say don't use that peat, it dries out just as fast as it is not absorbing. The whole game, the seed is keeping it moist, keeping that moisture in there, allowing that seed to grow and not necessarily dry out. If the very top of that soil dries out a little bit, that's okay. We don't want that root zone and that growing point to dry out. So please keep that in mind. Other people will use just bales of straw. I don't like doing that because, again, you get that cool season plant in there that you cannot remove unless you use Roundup or mechanically, which means physically going out there and pulling each plant. So just a quick little tip that I've kind of found. We'll peek back in here to these pellets. They're already expanding and absorbing a lot of that water. Peat is still floating, really not taking anything on. You can see here the top's even still dry. The soil doesn't absorb that water. So it may be too late for some folks, but again, that is why I do not like using peat to cover up my seed. I will incorporate that into soil beds to get a little bit of organic matter into it, but a lot of times I use the pine bark nuggets to help break that clay up. But again, your best bet is soil to keep moisture retention in there. So just another kind of middle of the season tip. If you guys have any questions or comments, please let me know. I will answer them as best I can. We will look for you next week. Thanks.